With all the rumors and speculation out there about Florida State trying to get out of the ACC, one of the questions being asked by many out there, and myself included, is how in the world would Florida State be able to get out of that supposed airtight grant of rights they have with the ACC that lasts through 2036? How in the world could they get out of that deal without costing them hundreds of millions of dollars? Well, I have come across an article that makes an effort to answer that question, and we're going to talk about it right after a word from our sponsor. Ladies and gentlemen, this episode is brought to you by Dutch Miller Automotive, where friends and family pricing means you get the best deal right up front on any new or pre-loved vehicle in stock every time. With brands like Chevrolet, Chrysler, Dodge, Jeep, Ram, Kia, Hyundai, Ford, GMC, Buick, and Subaru, the Dutch Miller Automotive family is always growing and ready to put you in the car or truck you've been searching for. Check out our inventory across West Virginia at DutchMillerAuto.com or come in today to the home of friends and family pricing, only at a Dutch Miller Automotive store near you. What is up, college sports fans, Big 12 fans, and fellow members of Mountaineer Nation? Welcome in to another edition of Couz's Corner. Belly yourself up to the bar and let me pour you out a shot of top-shelf college football content. What I'm serving up today and what is on tap is of conference realignment talk. Yes, we've all heard about Arizona possibly being the next member of the Pac-12 or of the Big 12 rather, and leaving the Pac-12. We all know Colorado's already committed to joining the Big 12 in 2024, but it seems like the Florida State and ACC talk is starting to steal the spotlight a little bit because of the report that came out by Jeff Nee of 24/7 Sports last week saying that Florida State, he's hearing from sources that Florida State may be planning to withdraw from the ACC by August 15th of this year, folks. And it's got a lot of people talking, myself included. And one of the big questions is this grant of rights deal. How in the world could Florida State possibly get out of it? Because grant of rights are typically really airtight. They're usually hard to get out of. Well, I come across a blog by someone a lot of you may know, a lot of you may follow on Twitter. His name is C.W. Lambert. He writes a blog called Big 12 Insider, or Inside the Big 12, I should say. He's at Big 12 Insider on Twitter. He's a West Virginia fan, a West Virginia native, and he really seems to be well connected, or at least claims to be, and seems to really be knowledgeable at conference realignment and how things work. And I just thought this was a very interesting read and something that I had never thought about. But I'm going to read it with you, along with you, and then I'm going to give you my opinion. But here's the article from Mr. Lambert. It says, ACC is powerless to stop FSU move to the SEC. The ACC grant of rights can't stop Florida State or Clemson from moving to the SEC. Put away your pitchforks, leave the tar in the barn, and the feathers on the chickens where they belong, and hear me out. I've researched the economics of college football, expansion, and the infallibility of a grant of rights since WVU joined the Big 12 in 2012. I came to the same conclusion that everyone else did. A grant of rights effectively eliminated the threat of a conference member leaving for greener pastures. Fortunately, it was an easy concept to grasp. Any school jumping from one conference to another was worthless if they were bound by a grant of rights. Smirkland Tech could leave the Big Country Conference anytime they wanted, but the media rights of the Smiles would stay behind. The end result, Smirkland Tech was worthless until the Big Country Conference's grant of rights expired. Conventional wisdom and a coal train full of legal minds concurred. There were only two ways a school like Smirkland Tech could escape the clutches of an ironclad grant of rights: fraud and lack of payment protects media rights. But circumstances have colluded to neuter the ACC's grant of rights, effectively rendering it powerless to stop FSU, Clemson, or any ACC member from bolting to the SEC. Here's why. The ACC's grant of rights proudly boasts of being irrevocable until 2036. But the rights granted to the conference flow through to ESPN. ESPN is the exclusive rights holder of the ACC. ESPN is an equity partner in the ACC network. ESPN is the exclusive rights holder for the SEC, beginning in 2024, that is. ESPN is an equity partner in the SEC network. See where I'm going? A grant of rights has been an effective tool preventing defections, but its effectiveness was rooted in the fact that major conferences split their media rights, at the very least, between two networks, ESPN and Fox. The SEC's media rights were split between CBS and ESPN. The Big 12, Big 10, and Pac-12 split their rights with ESPN and Fox. And here's where recent history teaches us a lesson. The issue that prevented Oklahoma and Texas from leaving the Big 12 much earlier than 2024, which, by the way, is a misprint, it's actually 2025, was how to make Fox whole for losing valuable inventory featuring the Blackheart traders. And that's why the ACC Grant of Rights can't stop FSU from leaving for the SEC. ESPN owns the exclusive rights to both conferences. The ACC can't revoke ESPN's exclusive rights to broadcast FSU home games. Doing so would reduce ESPN's inventory, and that means it's the ACC who loses money, not FSU. ESPN values their contract with the ACC. Heck, it's a great bargain for them. They snookered the conference into a deal that gave the mothership the ACC's broadcast rights below fair market value. It's such a good bargain that an industry source believes if the Seminoles and Tigers had the nerve to leave for the SEC, ESPN would not reduce ACC revenues. That's something I thought was important right there. He thinks that the ACC would actually be willing, that the ESPN would actually be willing to pay the ACC the exact same amount of money they are now, even if Clemson and Florida State left. It'll explain why in a minute. Doubt if you want. I don't blame you. Normally, a grant of rights eliminates the possibility of defections, but not in this case. This is going to happen. FSU and Clemson will jump to the SEC. How can I be so confident? The math works. Everybody wins. ESPN would make more money. The SEC earns more cash. FSU and Clemson finally be happy with SEC money, and the 12 remaining ACC schools would see their revenue increase with only 12 slices of the revenue pie as opposed to 14. So right there he explains why he thinks ESPN will be willing to pay the ACC the same amount of money even without Clemson and Florida State, because they would make it back, and probably then some, by having those two schools in the SEC, a conference for which they also control the media rights. And that's very interesting. I had never thought of that before until I read this article, but it is very interesting. Let's keep going. It says, here's the important takeaway. The ACC's grant of rights can't prevent Florida State and Clemson from appearing on television as members of the SEC. It would be the ACC who loses revenue from enforcing their grant of rights. Now, when I read that part right there, I've read this article multiple times, by the way, just trying to make sure I understand it. And this is the one part I always struggle to comprehend. So I reached out to the writer and asked for explanation, and I'll actually get to that here in a minute. But it says, and let's keep going, but what about the $120 million exit fee? No worries, that's recoverable. And it gets easy to recover when the money from the expanded playoffs starts flowing. And that's why I predict Florida State and Clemson bolt for the SEC in 2026. Now, based on the reports we're hearing and the rumors that are out there, that could actually happen a lot sooner than that. Please don't make the mistake of assuming it's open season on the ACC. ESPN's exclusive deals with the ACC and SEC is what opens the door for Florida State and Clemson. ESPN is bound to the ACC until 2036. They can make money by moving Florida State and Clemson to the SEC, but if the ACC were to lose more schools, it would just devalue their investment. So it sounds like he thinks that theory about, more than half the league just leaving all at the same time and blowing the league up, essentially, he doesn't think that's going to happen, it sounds like, at least not without a legal fight, major legal fight. So now let's go back to the explanation I received about that paragraph where it would be the ACC who loses revenue from enforcing their grant of rights. And I asked the writer, Mr. Lambert, I said, Mr. Lambert, can you explain that to me? Because I just don't understand how that's possible. And here is basically what he told me. If ACC stopped ESPN from airing Florida State home games, they would be in breach of contract with ESPN, basically, because ESPN owns the broadcast rights, and ESPN could then reduce their payout to the conference. The key is that ESPN owns exclusive rights to both the ACC and SEC. So as long as ESPN pays the ACC the full amount of their deal, ACC suffers no financial harm and can't claim liquidated damages. And again, they would be willing in this, if this is accurate, if his theory is right, the ESPN would still pay the ACC the full amount of their media deal. even without those two schools, because they would be making it up by having them in the SEC. And another key to make this work, and this is the only way it would work, is ESPN would have to see a net profit from Florida State being in the SEC. And would they? And I'm of the opinion that they would. Think about it. You get all of those games. Think about the games you would get on ESPN if Florida State was in the SEC. You get Florida State and LSU, Florida State and Alabama, Florida State and Georgia, the Florida State-Florida rivalry game. All of those games will draw huge numbers. And as you say, Clemson comes with them. You get Clemson and Alabama, Clemson and Auburn even, Clemson and LSU, Clemson and Georgia, the Clemson-South Carolina rivalry game. You don't think those games are going to draw huge numbers? They are, folks. They will draw huge numbers. Now, compare that to games like Clemson versus Boston College, or Florida State versus Syracuse, or Florida State versus Virginia, or Clemson versus NC State. And no offense to those other schools. They're great schools, great programs. But they would not move the needle like these games in the SEC would. And that's why I think the SEC would actually make more money, potentially, by having these teams in that league, which in turn would help the ESPN make more money. And then they would be able to offset that by continuing to pay the ACC what they're still paying them. Nobody loses money. Everybody gains a little bit of money as far as the schools go, because all the schools, like he said, all of the schools in the ACC would now have 2 less mouths to feed with that media deal. Everybody wins. It actually kind of makes sense. And the reason it wouldn't work if those two schools decided to go to the Big Ten, or may not work anyway, is because ESPN don't own the rights to the Big Ten. Those go to Fox. And CBS and NBC also have a hand in it as well. But I think Fox is the primary rights holder there. And Fox is also the primary rights holder or the primary owner of the Big Ten network. So Fox is the big player there. And there is no way ESPN is going to want to see those two brands, Florida State and Clemson, go to Fox, their competitor. No way in the world. So if they see that's going to happen, they're going to step up and file lawsuits. It would get extremely messy and extremely expensive. And the fact also, it would be harder to make that happen because the Big Ten TV deal kicks in this year, folks, 2023. Whereas the SEC and ESPN deal doesn't kick in until 2024. Yes, the deal has been signed, sealed, delivered, but it hasn't actually taken effect yet. It hasn't started yet. So they could still go back to the drawing board, redo the deal before it ever actually takes effect. Whereas the Big Ten deal, yes, you could still renegotiate it. I'm sure you could, but it may be a little more difficult, seeing as it's already begun. So like Mr. Lambert said in his article, the key would be if ESPN can make a profit, more of a profit, by those two schools moving to the SEC. And like I said, I think they absolutely would. And if they can, and do it without hurting the ACC's bottom line, and everybody comes out of this thing a winner, maybe, just maybe, Florida State can get out of the ACC for much less money than we all think. Let me know in the comments section, Couz's Corner family, what do you think about this scenario, this theory? How do you think it would play out? Do you think it makes sense? If you think it's absolutely ridiculous, I want to hear that too in the comments section. And is there anything in that article, if you're someone who knows about this and follows this story, especially if you're a Florida State or Clemson fan or an ACC fan, I want to know, is there anything in this article that might not be accurate as far as details about the grant of rights and whatnot? Folks, I want to let you know at the bottom of the screen, I'm giving a shout out to my channel members. Pub level members are the ones at level 1, which is $2.99 a month. And then also earlier, you saw the club level VIP members going across the bottom of the screen. Those are the ones who pay $4.99 a month. I want to give a shout out to all of those folks. If you want to join the VIP club here at Couz's Corner, all you have to do is hit the join button right below this video. It'll go over all the perks and everything that come with it, including special shout outs like this. Also, you can support me by checking out my merch store. I have a lot of merch to choose from. I have ball caps, T-shirts, hoodies, tank tops, all of that to choose from. Be on the lookout for a sale coming here early August for my merch store where you can get a discount. And for you club level VIP members, which is level 2, which I also have called in the past, have called the Mountaineer Maniac level, you get an additional discount with a special link that I will post in the community tab. That's one of the perks of being a club level member. Also, you can support me absolutely free by hitting the thumbs up button below, sharing it with your friends, dropping that comment, and subscribing to the channel. And oh, by the way, if you like the service I had to offer you today, be sure to leave me a tip by hitting that heart button with the $sign in it and giving me a one-time donation. And don't forget about my channel sponsor, folks, Dutch Miller Automotive, for your automotive needs. They're throughout the state of West Virginia. They're in Charlotte, North Carolina, Wytheville, Virginia, Bristol, Tennessee, and El Dorado, Kansas. And heck, they might have even more locations I'm not aware of. Go check them out, DutchMillerAuto.com. I appreciate you tuning in to this episode, and until the next one, Q Country Roads. West Virginia, Mountain Mama, take me home, country road.